So, hi all, Cantor Joanna Alexander here. Our subject tonight is called Queer Jewish Texts, an exploration, not an explanation, an exploration. Sorry about that.
It's going to be an exploration.
So I will start by saying I am not an expert. I am a cisgender female, heterosexual woman. So this is not an insider's exploration, but I am curious and I am a reader. And I brought with you the book with me today, the books that I turned to prepare for this class. So if you like some of the things I have to say or are curious and you want to learn more, I just thought I would share the titles with you. So I think that brings me to a little of like, why are we here? Why are we exploring this? And I'm going to start with a couple of really important whys. This is our community. The Jewish community of Omaha in the year 2022 and its entire history has included people who are not heterosexual, people who are not gender binary. They are Jews, they are humans, they have a right and a privilege of having access to God, of having access to community, of being seen and being heard and being part of our peoplehood. And we should be talking about what that means, and we should be embracing and understanding what it means when our traditions rub up against our friends, family, fellow human beings, humanity. So this is one of the big whys. I also, again, speaking as a ally outsider, as a heterosexual woman, cisgender woman, I found in my research just eye-opening experiences of humanity and eye-opening explorations of God. This is from the introduction. She begins by saying, God never mistook me for the body others saw. God knew who I truly was and understood how alone I felt because God, like me, had no body. To make God visible, no human face beings could see. And then Joy speaks about how she connected through the story of Jonah that is part of our Yom Kippur liturgy. This is a little bit of a long section, but I think it was so moving to me when I read it, and I would love to just share a couple pages with you. I was alone with God. All the things that cut me off from other people, my lack of a body that felt like mine, my inability to fit into gender categories, my sense of being utterly, unspeakably different made me feel closer to God. God knew who and what I was. God had created me, fitting my mismatched body and soul together. God was always there day and night as I tried to live and sometimes tried to die. We were an odd couple, me struggling with a body that didn't feel like mine, God existing beyond all that is, was, and will be. But when it came to relating to human beings, God and I had something in common. Neither of us could be seen or understood by those we dwelt among and loved. To me, that was eye-opening. Neither of us could be seen or understood by those that we dwelt among and loved. And so, for as long as I can remember, being transgender has brought me closer to God. That may seem strange. Both religious and non-religious people tend to think of transgender identities as inherently secular. But there are many religious people whose relationship with God have been profoundly shaped by being transgender because, as they wrestled with suffering, isolation, and questions about who they were and how they should live, they, like other religious people, turned to God for understanding they couldn't find among human beings. Most religious traditions recognize that conditions that cut us off from other people can bring us closer to God. Every year at Yom Kippur, when Jews traditionally read the book of Jonah, which tells a story every transgender person knows, the story of someone desperate to avoid living as the person, in Jonah's case, as the prophet they know themselves to be. From the beginning of the book, when God orders him to go at once to Nineveh and proclaim judgment upon it, for the wickedness has come before me, Jonah knows he is a prophet. He runs away because, as he explains in the final chapter, he knows God won't destroy Nineveh no matter how wicked the people are. That is why I fled. I know that you are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and renouncing punishment. Even as God tells him of God's impending judgment, Jonah, as befit a prophet, already knows that God will spare them. Sorry, I'm skipping a little. God's anger by telling God he would do, Jonah tries to appease God's anger by telling God he would do what God ordered him to do. Jonah's self-destructive response reflects a psychological pattern that is all too familiar among transgender people. Flee from yourself as long as you can, and when you can no longer endure the internal and external storms, kill yourself for the sake of others so you can avoid ever having to live with who you are. Jonah may have thought he was killing himself for the sake of the sailors, but the truth is that he was so desperate to avoid living as a prophet, as the prophet he is, that he prefers not to live at all. Transgender people often tell ourselves that suicide will resolve the conflict between their need to be and not be who we really are. Our families, our communities, our world will be better off without us, we think, and we, released from the shame of hiding and the terror of living as who we are, will finally be at peace. In Jonah's case, the suicidal fantasy seems to come true. When Jonah is thrown overboard, the sea stops raging and he sinks peacefully into the depths, into the heart of the sea, where he is swallowed by a huge fish. But Jonah miraculously doesn't die. In the depths of the sea, in the belly of the fish, Jonah finds himself alone with the God he fled. God literally surrounds him, providing him with breath, warmth, and protection, sustaining his life in the midst of death. In other words, Jonah's flight from himself leads him simultaneously closer to death and closer to God. The spiritual paradox is at the heart of his story, and it was at the heart of the story of my life when I was living as the man I knew I wasn't. One last paragraph. Unlike Jonah, I experienced God as preserving me in the depths rather than delivering me to life. God didn't want me to live as who I really was, I told myself. God wanted me and was helping me to submerge my true self forever. That's what love is, I told myself, pretending to be what others want you to be, suffering in silence, embracing loneliness, giving up on joy. Year after year, when the ram's horn blew on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, I wept, not because I was repenting for my sins, but because I knew that no matter how heartfelt my confession, as long as I lived as a man, I would never feel grateful or even truly alive. God could preserve my life in the depths of suicidal despair, but even God could not deliver me from the depths until I did what Jonah did, except that I had to live as who I truly was. Reading God and Torah from a transgender perspective. I think that as a cantor, as a clergy person, as a member of Jewish community, if we don't understand that a huge part of our religion is trying to reach those who are isolated and feel alone, then we're missing a huge part of the goals of community. To read so viscerally Joy's experience of exile and loneliness and 40 years of suicidal ideation, of believing that that was the definition of love, and yet feeling God with her that whole time, that was eye-opening. It was shocking. It was beautiful. Hi, Mom.
Hi, sweetie. So I think, in terms of human sexuality, we've certainly known for centuries and centuries that there is such a thing as homosexuality. But the whole transgender knowledge is relatively new, certainly for me. I never heard of it growing up. I don't think I heard of it when you were growing up. I think that we as people are only at the beginning of understanding that gender is a lot more complex than we used to think it was. So it was like you were a male or a female, and maybe you loved people who were the same. But now we know there is a range, there's a spectrum, there are many different places along that. And I do believe that the two most important words in the Hebrew Bible are B'Tselem Elohim. So wherever somebody falls in that spectrum, I believe they're in the image of God, and none of them are a mistake. And we as cis people, it's on us to try to understand where those other people are coming from. And at the very least, accept it when they say what they are.
Thank you.
Because I think there are people out there who simply don't accept it. They don't think it's real.
So I want to just pick, I think we have one last text. I don't know if it's the best text to end with, but it's a text I'm going to end with. It says from Avot de Rabbi Natan. So this is a book of a book of Midrash. And this particular section is being based on the statement from the Mishnah, from Pirkei Avot: appoint for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a companion. So this is, again, Midrash, that is story interpretation, filling in the blanks of the law. Acquire for yourself a companion. The word for companion is chaver, from Mishnah Avot. How is this to be done? This teaches that a man should acquire for himself a companion, and he should eat with him, drink with him, read with him, study with him, sleep with him, and reveal to him all his secrets, the secrets of Torah and the secrets of the worldly matters. For when they sit and occupy themselves with Torah, and one of them makes an error in a matter of legal reasoning, or in recalling a citation, or if he declares an impure thing to be pure, or a pure thing to be impure, or a forbidden thing to be permitted, and a permitted thing to be forbidden, then his companion will return him to correct reading. And from where in Scripture can we learn that when his companion guides him and studies with him, that they receive good reward for their labor? As it is said, 2 are better than 1, for they have a good reward for their labor, from Ecclesiastes. Is Avot de Rabbi Natan suggesting that a chaver, a chavruta, a study partner, is by definition have a sexual component? No. But Avot de Rabbi Natan shows an intimate relationship that is expected between male study companions. And to assume that none of those male study companions took the intimacy of their relationship into a physical aspect would be, I think, folly, and shows that there's a lot of humanity in our rules. There's a lot of humanity in our interpretations. There's a lot of humanity trying to decide what natural, what is godly, what is okay and not okay. And so again, we're not speaking of theoretical humans. Some of this is theoretical, but in the room today, we're not speaking of theoretical humans. We're speaking of each other. We're speaking of community members. We're speaking of creating a community that lives by Torah and understands that Torah must speak to humans who are non-binary, to humans who do not only have heterosexual love, and that those humans are part of us, part of our community, have access to God, access to faith, access to tradition, access to humanity, access to everything that the Jewish community of Omaha is. And that is why I'm here teaching tonight. Thank you all.